Thank you, Dean Orth. Today, we will start the summit talking about student engagement. One of Hub's core deliverables is to train the next generation of dairy talent to go out and make a difference for farmer, dairy producers, and citizens alike. Our four panelists each have different backgrounds and programs of study and represent all three campuses. To get us started, I'll ask each student to introduce themselves, their background, and give us a few minutes about their program and research. So let's get started. Tell me about your journey.
Or do you want to see
And introduce.
You want to see the little 2-minute?
Oh, yes.
Test. Hello, everyone. My name is Mitchell Armstrong. I'm a PhD student in the Ostrick lab at UW-Madison. There's me as an undergrad. Used to do microbiology research. That was my undergraduate degree. Bottom left, if I got to bow a little bit here, was me in my lab at ADSA. So we do all sorts of different conferences. I'm also a member in the Wisconsin Army National Guard. I'm a lieutenant of a HIMARS platoon. So that's some pretty cool stuff. If you want to talk about me or anything after, feel free to come up. But just a little bit about my research. I'm a big believer in starting with talking about why. So I want to introduce to you guys two problems that I see in the world. The first one is whey protein phospholipid concentrate. This is a byproduct made from whey protein isolate production. In 2023, over 100 million pounds of whey protein phospholipid concentrate was made, and that's because of the high demand for whey protein isolate. Right now, it's really just used as animal feed. It doesn't have a ton of human consumption uses right now. And then the other problem is osteoporosis, which is an age-related chronic disease with not very many medical interventions that exist. And as the demographics around the world shift to an older population, chronic age-related diseases like this are going to become more and more prevalent. And then what if I told you that when I fed WPBC and stuff to mice, they ended up having stronger bones? I won't go into the whole full abstract, but basically taking a underutilized dairy byproduct and using it as a nutritional supplement could be a potential treatment for, or not treatment, I shouldn't say that, could be a potential option for osteoporosis. So that's kind of the gist of my research.
I'll stay down here so you can see the lovely pictures. We have one of my coach's horses here. So I come more from an equine background, and I'll start off. My name is Kylie Beilke, and I'm originally from Hortonville, Wisconsin, so I'm born and raised in Wisconsin. So I originally did not grow up in the dairy industry. I ended up getting into horses, like I said, and then found in a roundabout way, I found my way here to River Falls into the dairy industry. So I'm coming back to my family roots of dairy farming a little bit here. So I'm currently an equine animal science pre-veterinary student, just applied to vet school. So this is my third year here at River Falls in my undergraduate studies, and I'll be graduating at the end of this year. And a little bit of my focus here, I got into research with Dr. Maria Fuenzalita, and we are focusing on mastitis. As you all probably know, that is something that is not just in Wisconsin, that is all over the world. So it is something that it was kind of easy enough for me to pick that up initially, although it's a bit of a complex topic once you get into it. But we're specifically focusing on developing ELISA protocols to target different cytokines and evaluate and measure those so that we can create more efficient and effective targeted treatments for mastitis, because in the long run, we want to be able to efficiently use our resources.
Hi all, I'm Gracie Krahn. Thank you so much for being here. I think in order to understand how I got here, we should first go back about 25 years. I grew up on a small dairy farm in the state of Oregon, and I proudly hold the title as a 6th-generation dairy farmer with roots coming back to small town Seymour, Wisconsin. And so as I grew up on a dairy farm that was vertically integrated, I became fascinated with the idea of consumer education and outreach. And so when I came to Madison to further my undergraduate degree, it was really natural that I pursued that. And I graduated with my bachelor's in the Department of Life Sciences Communications in December of 2023. And then I rolled right into my master's studying the same life sciences communication. But then I went a little bit out of my comfort zone and started studying sustainability as well. And it was in my coursework for sustainability that I became fascinated, not just with what sustainability means, but how it can be applied to the dairy industry. And so when the decision came to decide what I needed to study for my master's thesis, it was really clear to combine both of those passions of dairy sustainability and communications. And so I did just that, and I defended my thesis on Friday, so the celebration is still very fresh. Thank you. And now I am looking to, I should say, I won't get into the details of the research. I find it to be fascinating, but if you want to talk about that, I would love to discuss that with you. But now I graduate in December, so just a couple weeks away, and my next step is somewhat unclear, and so for a planner like me, that's uncomfortable, but I'm eager for the opportunity to step into a professional career that allows me to combine dairy, sustainability, and communication to positively impact the global and U.S. dairy industry.
Is this on? Up. Oh, here's the different. Oh, there we go. Is this on?
No.
Yeah,
Oh,
there you go.
there we go. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Krajco. I'm a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I'm originally from Hillsborough, Wisconsin, if anyone knows where that is. Very small town. I am a double major in environmental horticulture and soil and crop science with an emphasis in agronomy. And I, over the summer, interned for Dr. Joe Sanford. And I had the opportunity to work on a couple different projects, the first one being how biochar can potentially be a cover in manure storage to help with emissions from those storages. And now I'm currently working on how manure processing can affect nitrogen mineralization to get some more accurate manure recommendations for dairy manure on your farm. And so we're looking at how anaerobic digestion, solid liquid separation can impact your potentially available nitrogen, and updating some of the current A2809 recommendations to make it more accurate so you can not waste anything, not put too much on, and just overall help the environment. And thank you.
Thank you all. All right, so let's start at the beginning. Every journey has its first steps, right? Okay, so we've heard a little bit about your background. Now I have a couple of questions here. How did your connection to the DIH begin? Like, who introduced you to it, and how has your relationship with the hub evolved as you've progressed through your studies? That goes to everybody.
I'm over here so I can start. But my relationship with the Dairy Innovation Hub began when I approached Dr. Sanford after class if he would like an intern over the summer. And yeah, I was very interested in his work and I wanted to learn more. And I didn't know much about the Innovation Hub going into it, so it's been a really good experience to learn more about it and get involved, and brought me here today. So it's a really cool experience.
Wonderful.
For me, as I mentioned, I applied to vet school. So initially, my desire to get into kind of this realm was the motivation was, well, simply you want to diversify your application. That was one part of it. But I also would have never been interested in it except for the fact that I had got an internship through attending a leadership conference working for De Laval. And so at that conference, I spoke with someone from De Laval and then ended up working for a summer. And that was really got submersed into the dairy industry and seeing kind of the innovation side of it, not just, oh, we're producing milk, this is cool. I got to see a little more of the behind the scenes details. And so then that kind of, I think, sparked my fire for dairy. And then that's when I approached one of our professors here, Dr. Maria, and asked if she had anything cool going on. And she brought me in under one of the projects. And so now I've been involved with DIH ever since then.
All right, I guess it's my turn. So I'm really only here because of DIH. My entire project is funded through the DIH, my PhD program. So it was something that was kind of put in front of me, and I didn't really understand totally what it was. I just thought it was like, oh, DIH is just another funding organization. Lo and behold, I've now been to 6 or 7 different conferences and presented my research at many different forums in front of many different audiences. So I guess for me, the journey that started with just little bit of DIH funding has now become a big part of my life and a huge part of how I share my research with the world. So that's kind of a quick gist of my interaction and how it started with DIH.
A quote from one of my very favorite Christmas movies is, "Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans." And that's exactly how I got involved with the Innovation Hub. It was in April, and I was kind of scrolling UW student employment opportunities, and I came across this role as a project assistant for communications and marketing through the Dairy Innovation Hub. And I was like, it almost felt like angels started to sing. And I was like, no way, this like combines all of my interests into one. How neat would this opportunity be? And so one thing led to another, and I was able to get connected with Maria and Elizabeth, and I should say the rest is history. It's just been a fascinating experience to get to expand my network to fellow dairy, sustainability, innovation experts. And the hub has been absolutely instrumental in my research process, and then also helping prepare me to step into the professional realm as well.
Thank you. All right, so I have a question for you. Have your career goals or aspirations changed since you've had this experience with the hub? And if so, how?
This question's always difficult for me, and I always kind of like trying to answer it. But my future goals are still up in the air a little bit. I'm sure I'm not the only one. But having been involved with it now, it's definitely opened up some horizons and opportunities for me that I'm looking forward to pursuing, especially with Dr. Sanford. I've loved working with him. So we'll see if how far that continues on.
Fantastic. Gracie?
I wouldn't say my career aspirations have changed. I feel like my experience through the hub has just strengthened them. And so I think that my passions have just continued to be ignited, and the opportunities and experiences that have been provided have really strengthened and created a clearer vision about where I envision myself in the next 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Wonderful. Kylie?
Yeah, I would say my career aspirations have been ever evolving ever since I got into the animal industry world and in agriculture in general. I think I had a very limited idea of kind of what my options were going into animal medicine. And I now kind of see that there is a lot more realms to explore within even just the animal sector of agriculture. And whether that is, doing some research on the side or partnering with organizations like DIH or other things all along my career path, I can see that there's a lot more kind of side doors that are open to me that I never would have even discovered if it weren't for DIH.
Mitchell, I have a feeling this probably had a big impact on you.
Yeah, I think to call me confused about what I wanted to do with my life 3 years ago would be an understatement. I remember walking into my PI's office when I first met her and talking about the project she had in front of me, the DIH project. And I was like, milk, dairy? Like, I've never really interacted with this stuff in my life before in terms of research. And here I'm thinking it's food science. Like, what could be the fundamental crazy research that I want to do with this? And she started talking about it, and I started doing more research into it, and I built my research around it. And I learned to realize that the dairy industry is not a small industry. It is huge. It's full of possibilities, and I couldn't see my life going anywhere other than the dairy industry now. Whereas back then I had a bachelor's of science in microbiology with no idea of what to do with it. And now I know that the dairy industry has so many different possibilities and so many different routes that I could take with it. So yeah, the DIH has definitely changed my career aspirations, definitely focused them a lot more.
Fantastic. That's what we like to hear. All right. So one thing that really stands out about the hub is how it brings people together from different backgrounds to solve shared challenges. So to Gracie, your work focuses on how best to communicate with farmers, a topic that touches all of the hub's priority areas, right? So the human health and nutrition, animal health and welfare, land and water, and farm business and community. So here's the question. How do you see these areas intersecting in your research, and what has taught you about collaboration across disciplines?
So they naturally all intersect within my research, right? Because sustainability inherently has three interdependent pillars: economic viability, environmental stewardship, and social responsibility. And so, to no surprise, the Hub's 4 priority areas focus on each of those pillars. And so, naturally, my research focusing on sustainability, but being broken down into each of those pillars, touches on these necessary areas. And so, in terms of collaboration, though, it's absolutely necessary to collaborate across disciplines, to approach conversations, to approach opportunities with curiosity. Because, for an example, in my experience, if I was to only focus on environmental stewardship, which is important, but it's only the one piece of the puzzle of the broader sustainability narrative, is that I would have unintentionally pigeonholed myself in the success of my research, and as a result, it wouldn't have been of value to the entire dairy industry. It would only have been able to touch on a very small portion of what sustainability looks like from a holistic perspective. And so I think that when we think about collaboration, it's critical, and I'm one for quotes, you'll learn this, but if you want to go far, go alone. But if you want to do something well, successful, do it together. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Thank you. So then kind of a follow-up, do anybody else, find that their projects have crossed more than one of the priority areas that I just mentioned? I'll let you jump in.
I could probably go. So my project is very much focused on the human health and nutrition pillar, but it also does cross over into the sustainability piece. So being able to bridge those two things, kind of like I alluded to earlier in my research, taking something that is right now undervalued, represents kind of a challenge to deal with in the dairy industry, and a health problem that affects millions of people across the world, which is only going to increase, I think is a really cool connection with my research that the DIH made possible, right? Taking something that may not be wanted and seeing it as a solution for another problem, I think is a really cool thing with my own research that I found very rewarding to be a part of.
I would say that all these projects in some way intersect in, different pillars. You can't have one without the other. It's like having, 2 legs on a table and expecting it to stand up. So, but specifically in focusing on my research, I would say that we're not only just trying to look at the health aspect and, make the lives and the welfare of our cows better, but it's more of the long-term perspective of sustainability, as I mentioned in the beginning, that we want to be able to efficiently utilize the resources and the innovation that we're capable of so that we're not wasting time and money in places that could be fueling other areas of exploration.
I agree with Kylie on all that as well, and specifically for our research focusing on sustainability, for sure, using your resources most efficiently and preventing anything, using something you don't need where you don't need it, and optimizing your crop production as well, which is obviously a good thing.
Thank you so much. So let's talk about growth. One of the most rewarding parts of student involvement. Mitch, you've participated in several hub events, posters, full-length research talks, even media interviews. How have these experiences shaped you professionally and built your confidence as a communicator and leader?
I remember my first presentation at a DIH summit. I was incredibly nervous. I had practiced over a dozen times that very morning. Excuse me. And when I got up there and started talking, it just flowed out naturally and everything went exactly according to plan. Just kidding. It's not exactly how it went down. But just that very first experience alone was absolutely instrumental in building my own confidence to talk about my research, something I know I'm an expert in. Nobody knows my research better than me, but the ability to communicate that with other people is such an important facet of research that the DIH giving me that platform several times to present that has been incredibly helpful in developing me in my skills as a communicator, which again, I think is one of the most important parts of science, is communicating our research with many different audiences. And on top of that, I also wanted to touch on the impact that I have had on other individuals, right? My opportunity in the DIH has allowed me to teach several undergraduate students and develop their leadership skills and their communication skills. And I just wanted to really highlight how that when one person builds their skills and experiences, it often trickles down and can help many other people in the research apparatus, whatever we want to call it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. To Mackenzie and Kylie, what first motivated you to get involved in research as undergrads, and how has your perspective on research or your career goals evolved since then?
What first motivated me to get into research was definitely my advisor back in Platteville, Dr. Muthu. And he invited me to come work in his lab with him when I was a freshman, and I was like, why not? Like, that sounds cool. And so I worked in his plant biotech lab with him for a while, and then eventually learning about some other opportunities too. I still work for him. It was a great opportunity. I'll always be grateful for that. And I work from a different role now and do research with Dr. Sanford after kind of learning about all the different things that you can do. And after exploring that, I kind of first had like a very narrow view of like what research could be. And then after getting involved with it and seeing all the different things, there's really someone for everyone, whether you want to focus on the lab side or if you want to go outside and go dig a hole. Like, there's a job for you anywhere, no matter what research you want to explore. So, yeah.
I would definitely agree with that aspect, that you coming in as a freshman to undergraduate studies, you think of research as, oh, that's for smart people, or that's just you sitting in a lab, dissecting something or putting stuff in beakers. But it's definitely I've opened up my perspective to see that this is real world stuff. This is something that we're applying in the day to day, every hour of our day. Like, this is what's going to change the industry. And without it, we're going to stagnate where we're at and never get any better at what we're doing. So I think being involved in it has motivated me to not limit my career aspirations, not just be content. I'm aspiring to be a rural veterinarian, and so I'll be in an area kind of doing the same tasks throughout my week, but there's more to it to be had. And so I think that's something that I've learned doing research, is that if I want to dig into something and really get into the nitty gritty, I can do that. Like, we are all empowered to do that.
Fantastic. So kind of a follow-up question, and maybe we'll start with Gracie. What has surprised you most about working in a research environment?
I think my research environment is maybe different, focusing on kind of the social sciences, doing a qualitative research. My research area was my home office, with my mini golden doodle laying at my feet. And so I think that my challenges there, though, were different. I had to intentionally go out and seek advice in community, because naturally it's really easy to feel isolated in that environment. And so I think that it provided unique opportunities, and that I needed to learn how to fend for myself, be independent, etc. in that space. But also, it's okay to collaborate. And actually, it's encouraged, and you should do that. And you should seek out those experiences and those networks and those relationships, because they will provide really rich insight and value into whatever space you're trying to contribute to. In my space, my master's research.
Fantastic. Well, it kind of answers the next question I was going to ask anyway. So the Dairy Innovation Hub is known for collaboration within the universities and industry partners. And so you've already touched on this, Gracie, but maybe a little bit more about what about outreach after? So the questions were kind of like, how important is your industry research? How important is your industry relationships to your research? Do the hub's connection play a role in the research itself? And then really, how about those outreach after the study is over?
I think expressing gratitude is critical, and showing that you appreciate the insights, the time that whomever that may be who took time out of their very busy schedule to invest in you. Showing gratitude, being grateful to those individuals is absolutely critical. And I think the other piece of that too is to not just become stagnant with that relationship. Continue to pursue it, because you never know how that person may get you the next job or connect someone who may become your future employer, right? It's really not what you know, it's who you know. And I used to giggle at my parents when they would share that with me when I was little, but now I'm realizing that it is more important than ever to continue to pursue those relationships, because you'll never know that the value that they may bring to your personal and to your professional life.
So, Mitch, within your campus or department, how has being a part of the Dairy Innovation Hub helped you connect with other researchers or open doors to new opportunities?
I've been involved with several projects, not just the one project that I was funded by the DIH to do, but I've been involved in many other projects with many other labs because of the skills I had to develop and learn for my own project. And each time I get introduced to a new project, a new collaboration with another lab, now I'm learning a new set of skills. And so not only are these collaborations through my department instrumental in developing me, but they're also instrumental in developing my lab and those relationships and the actual research that can get done. So I'm not sure if I quite answered the question perfectly, but yes.
Okay. Kylie? So it sounds like these relationships have been really, really helpful. So can maybe you expand about both technical and personally how the relationships have developed?
Yeah. I would say that without being in these circumstances, it would be hard to, on my own, seek out these connections. I think that one thing I've definitely learned being in college is that you're not just here to, consume content and pass the exams. You're here to build connections. And whether it's through conferences or presenting research or, doing a roundtable discussion or experiences like this, there's always somebody to meet, whether it's somebody directly involved with your research or whether, a professor or another student, or whether it's somebody attending an event you're at that you would have never crossed paths if you were not at the event. So I've definitely learned to seek out people to talk to, challenge myself to go up to new people and engage with them. Growing up as an only child, talking to people was one of the biggest challenges as I grew older in high school. So through my research, DIH, and just in college in general, I've kind of been able to advance and excel in those areas more to build solid relationships that are ultimately going to help me thrive in my future.
Mackenzie, do you have anything to add?
So I would kind of just reiterate everything Kylie said. I think those opportunities and connections you make from those are very important. And I know our research specifically, we had to collaborate with 14 different farms to collect our samples to analyze. So if we wouldn't have had those industry connections, our research would have been a little more challenging. So yeah, I think it's really important to, like Gracie said, keep those connections, stay grateful, and yeah.
What did you find most interesting about connecting with the farmers at those 14 farms?
That was, I'm not gonna lie, that was up to Joe. He was the biggest connection there. But it was really interesting just to see what people out there are doing and the different processing methods and just the slightly different ways everyone is doing things, and it works. So that's one thing I thought was really cool, was there's not really one right way to go about everything.
Isn't it amazing at how the industry is so large and how different it is even at each different farm that you're at? Fantastic. All right. So let's zoom back up a little bit. The work you've been doing connects directly with the dairy community and to customers, right? So this is kind of to each of you. The work each of you are doing supports both dairy industry and the broader community. Who do you hope will benefit most from your research? And what kind of real-world impact do you want to see? Mitch?
So I have a pretty specific hope in mind for my own research. It's kind of what gets me up in the morning. Because of my research's implications for bone health, and a lot of the grant work that we've done has been focused on postmenopausal women's health, I could see a future where my research directly leads to a new consumer product that is targeted towards helping people in that chronic age group for those chronic age-related diseases, either in terms of a off-the-shelf consumer product derived from WPPC or a prescribed product that a physician or a dietitian can prescribe to give direct help to people who are struggling with diseases. So that's really what keeps me going, is the idea that people may be directly helped in their own lives by the work that I'm doing.
Fantastic. Gracie?
Directly, I hope that my research provides insight to the folks in the middle of the dairy supply chain, which is really who I focused on for the research. So think about processors, cooperatives, trade organizations, lead dairy organizations, how they communicate sustainability back to dairy farmers to encourage greater understanding and adoption of sustainable practices. And so through my research, I hope that these organizations, like companies, manufacturers, they're able to identify the recommendations about how to effectively communicate farmers, translate a topic like sustainability that's very complex, very nuanced, into language and terms that are easily digestible to farmers, like profitability, efficiency, business continuity, resiliency, things of that sort. And then indirectly, hopefully it also benefits the dairy farmers themselves. And so they fully understand, what does it mean for my business to be sustainable? And does it just mean I have to have a methane digester? Or does it mean that I'm able to provide my dairy to future generations to come? And how can we balance that?
Fantastic.
I would say that focusing more on the kind of direct short-term impacts of what I'm focusing on, that it would be something that helps farmers in their day-to-day, that we're not just throwing generalized treatments at things and, hoping that it clears up within a couple days. I would hope that we'd be able to more efficiently be able to treat these issues that we're facing every day and be able to get it cured quicker so that we can increase production, increase efficiency, because this is their livelihood. And I want to be able to improve these circumstances, especially for our small local farms, as it's a tough economy out there for anybody, whether they're in farming or not. And so if I can do anything to ease that burden a bit and make their farm run more effectively and efficiently and be more educated on how they can better run their processes in that respect, that would be my hope kind of in the short term. And in the long term, as I've kind of been mentioning throughout, this is something that I would hope to be a long-term sustainability kind of goal, that we can not only do it just for mastitis, but for other issues, whether it's in the dairy industry or other animals or even in the human industry, other applications, and looking into that to see how could we be more sustainable in targeted treatments of other areas also.
I'm hoping for our research that other researchers, people in industry, and farmers all benefit from this, using your resources more efficiently, and in short, getting the most out of your field and improving yield while, like I said, using your resources as efficiently as you can and avoiding any environmental implications that could, like with nitrogen. So
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. So as you think about your own growth, it's also great to share what you've learned along the way. So Mackenzie, what advice would you give a future student who is interested in getting involved in the research or the Dairy Innovation Hub? And others can chime in. And how can future students make mentorship, funding opportunities, collaboration opportunities?
my biggest advice would be to just say yes and go for it. You might feel unqualified or not feel smart enough, but you're smarter than you think, and it's one of the biggest opportunities you'll have to learn. It's a great experience, and you're more qualified than you think. and doing these opportunities will only help you in the long run.
Mitch?
I think the advice I would give to somebody maybe who had just graduated their undergrad or is in their later years looking to do research and kind of exploring around would be take a second look at dairy and food science and animal science. And I'm really insulting myself here, I'm going to be honest, because that was me. I needed to take that second look. I kind of had to have it put in front of me, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a really cool thing. And I learned to love it, and I learned to become incredibly invested in this field. And so for somebody who's new, when you see the food science and dairy, and you're like, well, that's not neuroscience. That can't be research. I'll take another look. It's pretty complicated stuff that has huge implications for not just you, but the community around you that neuroscience may not quite touch on quite as directly. So I think that would be my advice, is take a second look at it.
Kind of bouncing off of that, I just wanted to add that don't restrict yourself to whatever your area of focus is. I've had a lot of people say, oh, well, you're an equine student, you just must focus on all horse stuff. And I've learned that the most learning comes out of, exploring things like turtles and all sorts of other areas of agriculture and animals. Don't just think, oh, well, this is what I'm studying, so this is what I need to do research on. If, like you're kind of what Mitch was saying, if you're a neuroscience student, maybe there's something else out there for you. If you're a dairy science student that focuses on milk production, maybe you focus on a different aspect and kind of be able to broaden your overall knowledge, because in the long term, that's going to help you develop more in ways that you never would have discovered otherwise.
Can I build on that really quick? Yeah, I thought you made a couple of really good points there. And what I wanted to emphasize is we think of all these different research fields and industry fields as kind of these like singular things. But something that I've really come to learn a lot of is even within food science, my technical PhD field, every different food that I see people research and work on is so different, I think it could be called its own field. And when they start to blend together and interact with each other, like I've collaborated with people who are protein oxidation experts to look at my own dairy products and the protein oxidation in those that then relates to human nutritional health. Like the way these can blend together and how they're so different from each other is absolutely incredible to me. Sorry to go off on that tangent, but you had some really good points.
Fantastic. So I'll kind of throw this out maybe to Gracie or everybody. Beyond the obvious skills of leadership and communication, what other strengths have you developed through your hub experiences? Technical lab skills, or perhaps problem solving, working across disciplines? Yeah, I'll start.
I would say that communication and advocacy, not just for what you believe in, but for yourself, right? It can be a really kind of not scary, but intimidating world out there, especially in academia, where you're bumping shoulders with people every day that are experts in their field and who are top of their research and respected across the country and in some instances across the globe. Stand up for yourself, advocate for yourself, because oftentimes you have great ideas. That's why they brought you into their lab or wanted you to collaborate on their research in the very first place, is because they respected you. So stand up for yourself. I think the other thing too is I learned the value of getting uncomfortable. As someone who is fairly vanilla, if you know what I mean, being uncomfortable is just that, uncomfortable. But I've really been able to leverage that, and I've been able to determine that being uncomfortable oftentimes produces some of the greatest experiences, and you look back on all the different opportunities that came from just taking one step that was out of your comfort zone.
I would share a lot of the same kind of what Gracie was saying. They're very good points on you got to be uncomfortable sometimes, but in those circumstances, you got to be adaptable, and you got to trust in yourself that you have the capability and the mindset to be able to be in these kind of new situations without kind of drowning, in a sense. Like you'll get through it. Then there's going to be people that come alongside of you, kind of like the relationships that we were talking about. They are there to build you up, and you're going to build them up in a way, whether you see it or not. And so just be confident in who you are, but also you have to be adaptable. So maybe your personality doesn't jive with other people, so you might have to adapt in that way. For me, I kind of had to adapt into learning lab skills and different things. I had taken a microbiology course and learned the basics, so thankfully I had that foundation. But there's more kind of problem solving and creativity that you have to integrate into lab work that initially I was thinking it would be, well, it's very streamlined and direct. This is what we do. But when you're developing protocols and things, you got to learn how to be adaptable. So that has been something I've developed a bit here.
Fantastic.
I definitely agree with that. And one thing that I've definitely had to develop is a lot more independence. When I was working as a freshman, I feel like everything I was doing, I'm like, is this right? Like, am I doing this right? And as I went through, I've been like, I kind of know what I'm doing now. Like, I'm able to take on some more of those roles where I just work on my own. And it's kind of crazy to look back and see where you started and where you are now.
Isn't that insane? How much we grow and don't even know that we're there, right? 5 years later, whether you're in graduate school or whatever, you look back and like, I'm not that little kid anymore that come out of high school.
And adaptability has been a big thing for me too. We have a pretty big lab group, and sometimes someone gets sick or something breaks, and you got to roll with it and figure things out. And it can actually be kind of fun along the way because we're all in it together. So
That's a beautiful life skill to be able to have. Fantastic. So we're going to wrap up here, and I would love to hear from each of you on kind of a personal note. But the question is this: why dairy? Like, what drew you to this field, and what keeps you inspired to stay in it? Jump in.
I'll start. As a sixth-generation dairy farmer, dairy chose me. But I continue to choose dairy every single day. And for me, it's because I feel like I have an obligation to give back to the industry that molded me into who I am today, to advocate, to be a voice for people like my parents, my grandparents, my great-great-great-grandparents, and dairy farmers of all shapes and sizes. I want them to be able to be recognized, and I want consumers to understand where their food comes from and that dairy farmers truly are the backbone of this great nation.
I believe very strongly in giving back to the community that built me, and I see dairy as a way of doing that. I grew up in Wisconsin. I joined the Wisconsin National Guard. I'm a big believer in giving back to the community and supporting all of the things that made me who I am today. And with the skills and knowledge I have, I see my continuing research in dairy and my future prospects, either in the industry or more academia, as a way to give back to the world and my community as a whole. Especially with Wisconsin. I don't know if you guys knew this, but dairy's kind of a big deal here. So it's definitely a great way of me being able to give back to what built me up.
And as I mentioned at the start, my family had some kind of bloodlines of dairy, I guess. But the most closest that I got to it was my grandmother grew up on a dairy farm. However, my dad was never directly connected. You know, he kind of helped out with crop harvest and things here and there, but there's no active dairy farm in my family currently. So I initially took more of the technical side, and I was going into mechanical engineering. But then I got involved with horses and was volunteering at a Christian camp running trail rides up north in northern Wisconsin. So I got connected to the horses. And then that was when I realized I like serving people and animals. And then I kind of, along the way, got connected into the dairy industry, had my internship with De Laval, working on the technical side and focusing on kind of that innovation and implementing proprietary technologies in the industry. And so that was kind of just wow, this is some really cool stuff. And I wanted to explore it more and maybe expand my career goals. So when I first switched from mechanical engineering to veterinary medicine, I was focused on, okay, I want to work with horses. I want to be an equine veterinarian. We need those here in Wisconsin and all over the country. And now I've kind of broadened out to see, well, whoever needs my help, I'm going to be there. If there's a cow that's sick, if there's a goat that needs help, that's that's where I want to be. So because of that, I've kind of not only been I've been drawn into the dairy industry, and not only the technical side of it, but the people side of it. The people within dairy are unique. This industry is unlike any other. And that was something that I could tell early on in my experience, kind of as being kind of an outsider to the industry, for lack of a better way to put it. And I now see that there's something truly special here. And it comes with some really tasty cheese and milk. So, can't beat that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with everyone here. I never personally grew up on a dairy farm. We just had beef. But growing up where I did, we were surrounded by small dairies, large dairies. So it was always a part of my life in a way, but I never really realized it until I got to college and started exploring more of the things. And one thing I also appreciate about the industry is how if you're involved with the animals, the crops, the marketing side, anything, you can be a part of the dairy industry. And there's just so many different roles that you can get involved in. And I just think it's a really cool cool thing to get involved in, and like Gracie said, it's backbone of our nation, and any way we can support and give back I agree is very important.
Fantastic. So, well, that ends kind of the question and answer from me. I will look to the crowd and see, is there anybody that has a question for our panelist? You can come to the mic, or any questions.
Hello, my name is Pranandu Vasavada. I'm a retired professor, so I have a lot of time on my hand. I was impressed with all of you. Having worked with undergraduate students for like 34 years, having done research, undergraduate research, and only undergraduate research because we don't have graduate students. So my question to you is, biggest problem I see right now is a misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that people are spreading out there. And Mitchell, I was impressed with your introduction of your work. There are a lot of fake news out there about the bone density, and there are a lot of nutrition experts. I know somebody whose dog is a nutritionist because that's the only qualification I need. So how would you fight misinformation, disinformation, malinformation?
So I think there's a big difference between noise and signal. I think that's kind of what we should start with. And that there's a lot of research out there on many different subjects. And it's quite possibly all valid research, but maybe a couple of them aren't as quite robust studies. And the way we should parse through this vast amount of information we all have access to at our fingertips is by looking for trends in repeated situations. If 7 out of 10 studies are saying something is happening, I would go with saying that's what's most likely happening. And then it comes down to us as researchers with being honest in ourselves and being able to communicate what we think is right to the public. So many bad actors are going to take a single research study and manipulate it in a way to say what they want to say. But we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard and try to read between the lines and find the truth in the ways that we can find it. I guess there might be a better answer, but that's the best one I got.
This is for Mitchell. Have you presented any of your research to the medical field? I know there's at UW medical system, there are people that work in the bone health, both bone density field that are very accomplished. And I wondered if you have made any presentation or contact with the medical field.
I appreciate you wanting me to do that and thinking that that's a really good idea. I agree, it is a good idea. I would love to be able to present to the medical field. I have not yet, and to be honest with myself, I think it might be a little early for that. My study involved mice, and there are a lot of big differences between mice and humans. So until we have maybe a first clinical research experiment or a few repetitions of this study where we have the same evidence again and again, kind of getting back to that potential misinformation question from earlier, then I think is the time to present this to the medical community. I don't want to lead anyone astray. I want to make sure this is good, solid, robust research, but before trying to push it too fast along a road where maybe it shouldn't go.
Any one final question? So thank you to our excellent panelists. It has been great to hear about how these students have engaged in DIH. Now we will have a 30-minute break before we kick off our research talks. And I know you guys like to network. So we've made the break a little longer. However, I do very much encourage that you go check out the posters in the back for the duration of the event. They'll be out and about. Right here in the ballroom, fill your coffee mugs, get some snacks, and we will see you back here at 11:15. For our online audience, hang tight. We'll be back shortly, and remember to check out the online posters in the session tab. Thank you.